Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. We are in the book of Bamidbar. We're in the book of the wilderness. And we're learning wilderness. It's about the journey. We know the destination. We know where the people of Israel were on their way to, but they weren't automatically just right into it. There had to be a process, and that process is the journey. That process is that wilderness experience, if you will. And we've been learning that our life can have those as well. We can have those wilderness experiences in our life. We can have those things where we feel like we're just in a desert and what do we do now? And these things within us, the discontentment causes many things to rise within us. And what we've learned is that ultimately Yahweh called us out. He redeemed us. He gave us instruction in his word by his Ruach. Now he wants us to learn to have faith, to trust him, to walk with him, and to go into the promises that he has for us. And that is life. That's the journey. That's the process that we're in now. And there are many things that can happen along the way. In the book of Bamidbar, we see a lot of rebellion come out in the children of Israel. We see a lot of discontentment, anger, resentment, pride. All these things we see in the book of Bamidbar. But we also see the goodness of Yahweh. And we see people who do want to bring themselves closer to Yahweh, who want to be in his presence, who want to serve him and walk with him. And we see a generation rising up who wants to go in and fulfill the promises of Yahweh. We see people who are faithful to keep covenant. All these things we see in the entirety of the Torah, but in the book of Bamidbar, we see these things especially well. It really translates into the life experiences that we have here today. So today in this parsha, we're going to talk about vows. We're going to talk about the Nazir, or a Nazirite, the Nazirite vow, and a couple things regarding it, and what does it mean to make a vow? What does it mean in our life? We have vows and oaths and the things in Scripture. Ultimately, we know all the way down to Yeshua when he says it's better not to make a vow. Just let every word that you say have weight. Yes be yes, no mean no. Mean what you say what you mean. And I think if we lived life that way, it would be so much better. But a lot of times we start off with good intentions, though, and we don't carry them through. But again, not really getting into those today. But we find that the heart of the people in this parsha, the Nazir, is someone who wanted to dedicate their service to Yahweh. Now, don't forget this. We're talking about a people who were already in covenant with Yahweh. So this was not making a vow to be in covenant. This was a people who were already in covenant. They lived their life in Israel. They lived among the people, but they wanted to have that special consecrated moment with Yahweh. They want to have that special set apartness with Yahweh from the just the mundane, the daily things of life. So they would make a Nazir vow. They would make the vow of a Nazirite, and they would be consecrated. And there would be a place set aside for them in a place like in the Temple Mount. They even had a spot for the Nazir where he could go and he could be there in the Temple Mount, in the area in the presence of Yahweh. It was special things that were done, being set apart here. And that means that they were holding themselves undefiled from the world, and they were abstaining from things of the world to have that special moment, that set apartness to Yahweh. So let's get into it, guys. Let's jump into Numbers chapter 6. Numbers chapter 6 says, Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, when either a man or a woman makes a special kind of vow, the vow of a Nazir, consecrating himself to Adonai, the first thing I want to point out here is that if you made a vow of a Nazir, you would be separated for a time, be consecrated and set apart to Yahweh, okay? But there were different kinds of vows or oaths that a person would or could make. Ultimately, it just comes into what you say you're going to do. So Yahweh isn't saying specifically that you have to make this type of a vow. What he's saying is if you decide to take upon yourself, in other words, it's kind of like when you go into the land and you say you want a king like all the other nations and you reject me and you say you want a king, I'm going to give you some guidelines here. It was not the intent or the heart of Yahweh to have a king over them. He was their king. But what he says is you're not going to get off this. So I'm going to give you some guidelines to follow so that if you set up a king among yourselves, at least he is to point you back to me. You will have a righteous king, and this is what he is to do. So in here, Yahweh is saying, if you take it upon yourself to make these types of vows, and we'll cover in a minute, there were some who did not take upon themselves, but it was initiated by Yahweh and their parents. Okay, we'll cover that in a minute. But if you were to take upon this vow, then do it. keep it. But the thing about a Nazir vow is that most of them, there were time limits. There were time frames that were on them, and it would be a period of time. You would say, you would take a vow of a Nazir for a certain period of time, and then at the end of that, then you would bring certain offerings at the close of the vow, and you would have your head shaved again. Again, that would be a change of covering, a change of status, a change of, the old things are now complete, are gone. You're entering into a new chapter, a new season in your life. And so this is one of the things that we see in the scripture. Okay, so back to number 6. Verse 3, so if a person is to make a vow, he is to abstain from wine or other intoxicating liquor. He is not to drink vinegar from either source. He is not to drink grape juice, and he is not to eat grapes or raisins. As long as he remains a Nazir, he is to eat nothing derived from a grapevine, not even the grape skins or the seeds. You can find a lot of midrash on here as far as why not, but he doesn't tell us really why not. He doesn't explain this to us. One of the things that they've said is, as you go back and you study through different things, you can find that they say, well, it's they don't partake of the grape or anything like that, so that they're not tempted to drink the wine or to have anything to do with the wine, and not to eat the raisins or the grapes because they taste it. Then they might want the wine, and to avoid any other kind of intoxicating liquor so that they don't want to do the wine. I mean, so it could just be something like that. I don't know. Okay, this is just, there's just many different takes on it, and it's just one idea. But consider that Yahweh told Aaron, when a priest, when him or his sons comes in to minister before Yahweh, they are not to have drunk intoxicating liquor or wine in his presence. Why? Because what if they make a mistake, or what if they act irreverently in the presence of Yahweh? What if they do these things? What if they behold themselves improper in his presence, right? Think of Nadav and Avihu, because that's when Aaron was instructed about this. So you are to carry out and have your full mental capacities about you and be mindful of what you were doing in the presence of Yahweh. So that could be another thing as well. If you are a Nazir, you are set apart and consecrated, be sharp. Be mindful of every action that you do. Be mindful of your surroundings even, because even if a person, he feels under a vow, he were to touch something unclean, that would restart his vow. I want to say nullify his vow, but not really. It would now his time period would restart back at day one. You have to go back over the process again. Okay, what if someone had unclean had like brushed up against him and touched him accidentally? Same thing. He would be rendered unclean, and he would have to go back to day one. See, so it's not just a matter of maintaining themselves; they would have to be mindful of their surroundings and everything around them as well. You may be familiar with some of the Nazir in Scripture, right? A couple of them are Samson, that we see in Judges 13, Samuel in 1 Samuel 1:11, John the Baptist in Luke 1:15. All of these are from birth, but you could willingly enter into the vow of a Nazir. You could willingly go into it. Okay, so these were given from birth because it was a declaration from Yahweh that it would be so. Okay, so their parents took this and instituted of someone who these men were called from birth, and they were dedicated to Yahweh at birth, or even beforehand, actually. So before they were born, they were called apart and consecrated, dedicated to Yahweh. So that continued in their life as well, right? But a person could make a vow upon themselves. They would put upon themselves what Yahweh had not required the average person to do, but they could take the obligation upon themselves to do so. And if they did, then there were guidelines given. Okay, so what is a Nazir? Nazir means something that is separate or consecrated, an unpruned vine, or something that is like a vine that is undressed, from the word nazar, which means to abstain or to consecrate or be devoted. That's why he says, like an example, if a person was a Nazir, he didn't cut his hair. He was unkempt, like an undressed vine. Whatever it grows, however it is unto itself, then that's what it is for that time period. That's what it is for that time frame. Okay? So back to number 6. Verse 7 says, he is not to make himself unclean for his father, mother, brother, or sister when they die, since his consecration to God is on his head. Throughout the time of his being a Nazir, he is holy for Adonai. So what we learn is, don't make yourself unclean or do not become defiled for anyone. You belong to Yahweh. Okay? Even more so if you were set apart in his courtyard, in the Temple Mount, in the area of his Mishkan. If you were set apart in these areas, even more so, you were set apart to a certain degree of consecration, a certain degree of holiness that the average person in Israel was not, right? Because you were there to serve. And we know that the priesthood, they served in courses. They had times where they served, and then the rest of the time they were not actually in the Temple Mount or in the Mishkan they were serving, but they had times that they were serving. And during their service, they were set apart. They stayed there. They were consecrated, and they took certain restrictions upon themselves that didn't necessarily apply when they were not serving at the temple and when they were home. Okay, so again, this is the closer you get to the presence of Yahweh, the more mindful you have to be of you, who you are, who He is, in the areas of clean and holy and common. Okay, and these are things that we're in the process of learning. That's why we study His Word. That's why we study His heart, the things that He wants us to learn along the way, so that we can live a life here set apart as holy. All Israel was holy. Okay, all Israel was set apart. He said, you are a people that are set apart. You are a holy people. So we can live life day to day as a holy people. But the closer you got to the tabernacle, the closer you got to the temple, the more you had to be aware of the things that could render you unclean, and the fact that you were consecrated and that you were a representative of Yahweh and that you needed to be clean in His presence. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 21. This is the law for the Nazir, who makes a vow for his offering to Adonai for his being a Nazir, in addition to anything more for which he has sufficient means. In keeping with whatever vow he makes, he must do it according to the law for a Nazir. So again, understand, the Torah does not tell you you have to make a vow. It doesn't tell you even the vow of a Nazir or any kind of a vow. It does not say you have to make a vow. And again, this is talking about people who had already entered into covenant with him. Okay, so this isn't a matter of making a vow to keep covenant. This is a matter of making a vow and taking something upon yourself and swearing upon this, right? That Yahweh didn't specifically say you had to do. So Yahweh says, if you do this, it's important that you follow through. So again, if you decide to set yourself apart, there are requirements on you that may not be necessarily applicable to the layman of Israel, if you want to put it that way. Many of the requirements for a Nazir was the same as the Levi'im, same as the Levites, because they were in the areas of the Levi'im, so they had to keep the same rulings that were there and to honor Yahweh that way. Now, we learn, again, we'll touch on this in a minute, I'll give you the scripture for it, but Yeshua says it's better that you don't make a vow than to make a vow and not follow through with it. All right, so if you make a vow, follow through. Again, a Nazir is one type of vow. All right, so what does it say in Ecclesiastes? It says, do not be quick with your mouth or hasty in your heart to utter a word in God's presence. For God is in heaven and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few. As a dream comes with excessive burden, so a fool's voice with too many words. When you swear a vow to God, don't delay in fulfilling it, for He takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better for you not to vow than to vow and not pay. Don't let your mouth lead your flesh to sin. And don't say before the messenger, it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? Many dreams and many words are meaningless. Therefore, fear God. Again, just let the very actions of your day-to-day life have integrity. Have honor. Represent Yahweh. Again, say what you mean what you say, right? Matthew, Yeshua says this. Matthew 5:33, again, you have heard that our fathers were told, do not break your oath and keep your vows to Adonai, but I tell you, not to swear at all, not by heaven, because it is God's throne, not by the earth, because it is His footstool, not by Yerushalayim, because it's the city of the great king. 36, and don't swear by your head, because you can't make a single hair white or black. Just let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Anything more than that has its origin in evil. You do not have the authority to control life around you. Now, you can have good intentions, and you can say you want to do something, but you can't control everything that happens around you, but with other people involved and nature itself involved and things happening, and you have no control over that. So why would you make a vow that you're going to do something if you don't have control, if you could actually follow through with it? Here's one example. You're not promised tomorrow. You don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know what the very next minute in your life holds. You don't know if you're going to take your next breath or not. You don't know what's going to happen, and accidents happen in the world. So if you make a vow, you need to follow through, but you don't have the power to do that. So again, just have integrity. Yes is yes, no is no. And yeah, that's it. Okay, so back to Numbers 30. So when a man makes a vow to Adonai or formally obligates himself by swearing an oath, he is not to break his word, but he is to do everything he said he would do. Now notice that. He said he is to do everything he said he would do. So if they make the vow and they take the vow of a Nazir, they say, okay, I'm not going to partake of any of these things regarding the grape. I'm not going to drink anything intoxicating. I'm going to set myself apart. I'm not going to, if something were to happen within my family in that time, I understand I can't go to the funeral. All of these things, they're setting themselves apart. And if there are anything additional that they would take upon themselves, then it would be binding for them at that time. And then at the end of their time frame, because see, not everyone was a Nazir all their life, okay? They would make a time frame upon it. And at the end of that time frame, then they would have a ceremony with the korbanot, with offerings and things that were offered then at that time, which could be very costly. Okay, so to take this type of a vow, it cost something. There was a lot involved in this. It cost you something. It's not just saying, oh, I'm going to do this because I don't want to do anything else. No. You were set apart. That meant you were praying, you were studying, you were learning, you were in the presence of Yah. And again, it was a time that was set apart. But at the end of this, it cost you all these other korbanot and all these other things that you would have to bring to Adonai before, at the completion of your vow, before you would go back into your, daily, normal life, if you will. Psalm 66:12 says, you made men right over our heads. We went through fire and water. You brought us out a place of plenty. I will come into your house with burnt offerings, and I will fulfill my vows to you. Those my lips pronounced and my mouth spoke when I was in distress. Have you ever said anything like, Yahweh, if you just get me out of this mess, I will fill in the blank, whatever that is. Anything in that way, shape, or form is considered a vow. If you do this, then I'll do that. And then do you follow through? And it's funny because we cry out to Yahweh when we realize we need him, when we realize we have no other options, when we're in distress and there's no other way, we can't see how we can do it. We cry out to Yahweh, and then Yahweh helps us. He gets us through these things. And are we faithful to fulfill our part of what we said we would do? Or is it a matter of, oh, hey, it worked out. Never mind. I got this. So things to consider, right? Again, that's why Yeshua said, just let yes be yes, no, no. Okay, Proverbs 20, verse 25. It is a snare to dedicate a gift to God rashly and reflect on the vows only afterwards. Consider your choices. Consider the things that you are saying, especially in regards to the kingdom, especially in regards to Yahweh and his word and his people. Okay, consider Ananias and Sapphira in the book of Acts. Go back and read it. Go look at it. But they had determined that they would sell property and give the proceeds to the disciples, to the people there to help distribute and just to help with everything else. Were they commanded to do so? No. Were they told by anyone else they needed to do it? We don't have no record of that. We're told that they decided to do it, and then they withheld that which they said they would give. It's not a matter of, oh, they didn't give it all, so God didn't bless them. No, it's just they didn't do what they said. They lied. Okay? They didn't follow through with what they said they were going to do. And it cost them their lives. All right. Again, just be honorable. All right. Have integrity. Deuteronomy 23:21. When you make a vow to Adonai your God, you are not to delay in fulfilling it. For Adonai your God will certainly demand it of you, and your failure to do so will be your sin. If you choose not to make a vow at all, that will not be a sin for you. But if a vow passes your lips, you must take care to perform it according to what you voluntarily vowed to Adonai your God, what you promised in words spoken aloud. That which you said you do. Okay? Now let's go to Acts 18. Shaul, which is Apostle Paul, right? Shaul remained for some time and then said goodbye to his brothers and sailed off to Syria after having his hair cut short in Syria because he had taken a vow, and with him were Priscilla and Aquila. Again, he made a vow, and at the completion of the vow, it was one of the things that they were to do was to shave their heads, and then offerings were given as well. Acts 21, verse 20 says, on hearing it, they praised God. They also said to him, you see, brother, speaking to Shaul, how many tens of thousands of believers there are among the Judeans, and they are all zealots for the Torah. There are people believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, people who serve him, people in covenant, people who believe also Yeshua is the Messiah, and they are zealous for the Torah. Okay? Now, what does it say of them? What they have been told is that you are teaching all the Jews living among the nations to apostatize from Moshe. You don't have to keep the Torah, telling them not to have a Brit Milah for their sons and not to follow the traditions. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear you have come. The accusations, false accusations, if you will, if you continue to read the book of Acts, find out that the accusations against Paul were false. He was not teaching people to, oh, don't worry about Torah. Don't worry about that. That's not important. He wasn't saying that. Okay, and again, Peter, in talking about Paul, said that the unlearned and untaught twist the things that he say to their own destruction. You know, Paul was a very deep guy. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees, trained by the best of the rabbis, okay? There were some things that he were teaching and things that was thought, that specific letters written to specific people for specific situations, that you can't just throw a blanket statement out there for everybody. Again, consider the sources and consider what was done, and understand when they're saying, oh, Paul said we don't have to keep the Torah. Paul said these are false accusations, and others as well. As you go back in and you finish the book of Acts, read it. It says these accusations were false. Again, so we start verse 22. They will certainly hear you have come. Verse 23. So do what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take them with you and be purified with them, and pay the expenses connected with having their heads shaved. Then everyone will know that there is nothing to these rumors they have heard about you, but on the contrary, look at this, you yourself stay in line and keep the Torah. See that? What they're saying is, Shaul, there are men we have that are under a vow. If you pay for their expenses to finish and complete their vows and be purified with them, you are doing what the Torah has said to do. You are following the Torah, bringing the appropriate offerings, submitting yourself to the priesthood that's serving in the temple. You're doing these things as a show that you keep the Torah. And again, it was just a matter of he didn't have to do it, but it was submitting themselves to the process for the sake of saying, yes, I serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. Again, the most important thing, honestly, is just this. Very simply, like Yeshua said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Everything, if you're doing these 2 things, everything in the Torah will fall under one of these 2 categories in some way, shape, or form. So, love Yahweh. Follow him. You don't have to put extra fences along yourself so you don't transgress what Yahweh gave you. Okay, you don't have to say, well, Yahweh said, like, don't touch that pin over there, so I'm going to build a box and throw it over the pin, then I'm going to set it on fire, and then I'm going to, we come up with some crazy stuff. Okay, Yahweh says don't do this, so I'm going to do all these other things to keep me away from it. Just do what he said. You don't have to put extra stringent things on yourself just to keep from doing what Yahweh said. Matter of fact, it shows our focus is a little off as well, because there's so many things in the Torah that Yahweh instructs us to do. And if we follow the heart of Yahweh, just doing the things that he says to do, we won't have to worry about the things he says don't. And again, are we trying to study the word and try to study the Torah so we can find loopholes, to find how we can find ways of getting around what he said? Or are we just simply trying to find his heart? We're just trying to say, Yahweh, reveal you to me and let me walk with you in that. Show me your ways so that I can become more like you. This should be our cry. This should be our heart. This should be what we are doing. Just love the Lord your God, follow him, keep his word. That's it. You don't have to make some big dramatic show to prove a point. We don't owe anybody that. Just simply love the Lord your God. Love your neighbor. Do what's good. Ecclesiastes, again, chapter 12 puts it this way. A final word. When all else is said and done, guys, a final word. When all has been heard, fear God and keep his mitzvot, for this applies to all mankind. And God will bring every deed into judgment, including everything that is hidden, whether it is good or evil. Doesn't matter what it is. Just set your heart before Yahweh. Just do what he says. Follow him, love him, keep his word, walk in his ways. Be encouraged. And don't make life harder than it has to be. Life should not be a constant looking around. Oh no, I can't do this because I'll transgress. And oh no, if I walk here, I'm going to transgress. And oh, if I slip up, will I ever get back up again? Your focus is completely off. Turn your heart back to Yahweh. Focus on Him, the goodness of Yahweh. If you're consumed with the goodness of Yahweh and the good things about Him, you're not going to worry about all these other things. The potholes in the road, won't even bother you. Won't even trip you up. Just follow Him and walk with Him. All right? All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. And I hope these things have encouraged you, guys. I really do. I hope that these teachings we put out weekly, I hope they're a blessing to you. I hope they encourage you. I hope they bring life to you. I hope they challenge you. And I hope they cause you to look towards Yahweh and to see His heart and His ways above all else, okay? So if this has been a blessing to you guys, please share them. Please share these videos in whatever format you use to watch them, listen to them, whatever it may be. Please share them. Help get the word out there. And again, if they've been a blessing to you, please consider making a donation to help us continue in making these videos and allowing us to be able to put these things out, okay? So that's all we have for you today, guys. So until next time, be blessed and be a blessing, all right? So shalom.